Pickaxe.
Hello and welcome to the podcast version of this week's One Life Left radio show. I am Simon Byron.
I am Steve Curran.
We're a little bit pushed for time this week because we're recording so early, but that went okay. I was a bit worried about doing a very early Monday morning one because, sometimes I find it difficult to communicate first things in the morning, Steve, but that was okay.
Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. A lot of serious game discussion on there today as well.
Wasn't there? You dear readers, listeners, are about to learn what annoys us about trying to launch video games, our solution for the current artificial intelligence Ferrari, and other things.
All kinds of things.
And nothing went too wrong, did it? So no apologies or corrections.
No, should be quite a slick one to edit this week. Thanks for that, Phil.
Thanks, Phil. Sorry we didn't let you know that we were recording at a different time. Get out of bed earlier next week, please. Actually, no, we aren't doing it first time next week, are we? We do need letters, though. If you listen to the show, please do send us some letters. Don't make us reintroduce spot prizes again, because we will. so who knows? But apart from that, that's it, Steve, right?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, here's the show. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, good evening and welcome to One Life Left on Resonance 104.4 FM. We're a video game radio show and my name is Steve Curran.
Hello, I am Simon Byron.
How are you, Simon?
Doing okay, Steve, thank you. You join us first thing on a Monday morning. We're going to shift our recording times, aren't we, Steve, to be a bit more current, a bit more Steve current.
We experimented with an afternoon slot last week. Found we got lots of energy, didn't we?
Exactly. So we thought we'd try the opposite.
You're the first person I've spoken to this morning.
Really? Blimey, I've had a busy morning trying to get Ramona up, dressed, suntan lotion on, and then to school. Unfortunately, in my haste to get back and record the podcast, we were at the school gates a little too early, so we had to endure 3 or 4 minutes of her and her mate Ethan pretending it was the weekend and then showing off to each other. Ethan, I discovered, has an iPhone. I said, I'm really sorry to hear that. And I don't think his mum appreciated that. I was kind of joking. I had to back it up by saying, I'm not cool enough to have an iPhone. When, I flashed forward to Ethan as an adolescent and then as an adult. He's someone with an iPhone, Steve.
Is that it then? Is Ramona getting a phone? Has she already got one?
Well, it turns out that Ethan's got one, isn't it? So then,
That's what I mean.
Yeah. And then his mum said, "Oh no, don't worry, it's an old one." I said, "Still an iPhone though, so you're still a..." And then I used the worst swear word.
Really?
No, I didn't. Of course not. Hopefully she'll forget about that. She's got enough blooming stuff. She still doesn't believe when I, reflect on my childhood. We didn't have a computer until the ZX81, Steve. I was 10.
We're a video game radio show and we're old men angry about young children. Alice got a drum machine this weekend.
Oh my God. Whose idea was that? Someone who doesn't like you.
Yeah, well, clearly it was Alice's aunt, wasn't it? It was.
Right.
I managed to, she was playing with it and I expressed, fascination and wonder while making full eye contact with her. I turned it off with my foot. It was quite a delicate manoeuvre. I hit the little battery switch, moved it from off to on, and said, "It's out of batteries." It's out of
Excellent
batteries.
work.
And she
You know what? Talking of flash forwards, I think after we've passed and our children decide to continue the connection with their dads through going through the radio show, it'll be at this point, Alice, you'll have discovered that your dad has been lying to you. Just be a bit more honest in future, Steve, and turn it off with a hammer.
How else? What else has been going on? Did you watch the cricket?
I did watch the cricket. We were... So it's been a busy weekend. I went to see Pulp on Saturday night. So that's Muse and Pulp within 7 days of each other. It's like the last 20 years didn't happen, 30 years even. 25, let's settle on that. Apart from the fact that I make noises when I put my shoes on these days. But yeah, that was good. An actual gig in actual London. So enjoyed that. And then yesterday, so I was following the end of following the start of the fourth innings from Finsbury Park, and then yesterday it was on, usually on a second screen because it appears that if we're at home and there is an opportunity to watch Charlie and Lola on the iPlayer, then we will be doing that. So I was watching on the second screen. Then we had tickets booked to the circus, didn't we?
Oh,
yes, and this was it started at 1 o'clock.
Busy week.
Well, busy weekend, but at 1 o'clock was just after the drama with the controversial run out. And
1 o'clock was when Ben Stokes was responding in kind by hitting everyone for six.
And so there were dancers and there was acrobatics. No elephants these days, Steve, and no bears, no smoking bears in circuses. I don't know what's happened. Things have changed. Acrobatics and magic and comedy. I had my phone cupped between my legs and my hands sort of forming a light guard around it. So I watched Ben Stokes enter beast mode. The thinking being, you couldn't miss what would have been, and very nearly was almost the greatest ever session with the bat by an English cricketer, which, if we'd have won, then it absolutely would have been. It's just a shame that it unravelled so quickly.
Well, it did, didn't it? But it's all set up now for Game 3 and the comeback to end all comebacks. Or the slow slide into 5-0 defeat. I've had a disastrous week in terms of sporting results. In that I've been to, I think, 4 cricket matches, watched 4 cricket matches, maybe 5, and my team has lost every single time.
Whoa!
Including last night on the final ball. And even the final moment of the final ball, when the ball was almost caught, but then went for 6 instead. I was tipped over the rope, basically.
Oh.
And I think the beautiful thing about cricket, I was a little bit sad for 5 minutes, but it's all about the drama, isn't it? Really. And the larger narrative of in this case, Ben Stokes saving Test cricket, potentially, which is bigger than one result. But I think that's a good lesson for everyone, as I've mentioned on the show before. It's not just about win or lose, like all video games. It's about the journey, isn't it?
Indeed. Also, it's about giving your children ammo to throw at you. So during the weekend, when Ramona had a meltdown at one point, she said she was screaming on her back on the floor, and then she said, "I hope Australia win."
I'm thinking of taking Alice to a 100 game. She's 4 years old.
Are you? Yeah.
You think?
Oh, absolutely. I think the 100 looks like a great day out. If it wasn't so blooming far away, Steve, I'd offer to join you, but I think that's unlikely to happen.
Right. We have 5 news stories. We have a letter. I think. Oh, we drilled into the missing letter. I'll talk about that later in the show.
Okay.
And we have reviews. I've played some games that aren't Zelda.
Hooray!
And we'll have an update on your fancy non-Steam games machine as well. No guest today because it's so early. We couldn't invite a guest on at this time, could we?
No one else is up.
Well, I'll tell you who is up. It's Charles Botts.
Me, Charles Bot 1.0. Daedalic Entertainment, a German game publisher, has announced that they are ending all internal development and will be focusing on publishing, licensing, sales and marketing. 25 employees have been affected, and the company has said it will help them transition. The decision comes after the release of the universally panned game Lord of the Rings, Gollum, which is currently the lowest rated game of the year. If a studio shut down just because a game was bad, Peter Molyneux must be relieved Milo never came out.
Was that guided by you, or did you ask it to make a joke about
Yeah, a little bit.
Molyneux?
I have to say, Charles Bot wasn't feeling particularly funny this week.
Really?
I've got some feedback, actually, for Charles Bot. And separately, clearly someone's been on holiday at videogameschronicle.com over the last week. Very, very few news stories, which, it's important that we all take time off. But, when a site that we're plagiarising decides to do so, it affects our listeners too. So
Yeah, please.
think on.
So the release of Gollum was caused the internet to erupt, as it does in a pylon, in horror and mirth, absolute outrage that people could. How dare they release a game like this? And then people making memes, and there's no real way back from that, is there?
Well, it's absolutely not, it seems now, because Daedalic have taken the approach that I remember some of my early teachers used to do, which was if you didn't behave, then we wouldn't do anything fun. And they've cancelled all their games then. Well, if you don't like Gollum, then we're not going to make any more. I'm sorry.
Well, were there? I mean, you've got to assume there was something in production, but this is their internal team, isn't it? Now,
it is.
This is what I know a lot of people were getting confused about on the internet when they were raging that the studio responsible for, and then a list of hits by Daedalic in the past.
Yes, they made they're probably most famous for the Deponia series of games. A game I did enjoy of theirs over recent years was State of Mind, which was a good science fiction adventure, which I enjoyed. But no more. You can't have anythings if you don't like Gollum, it seems.
Well, I think we've mentioned on the show before that they set themselves up, or at least their marketing department set themselves up for a bit of a fall by the nickel and diming, again to take a slightly Redditish expression, of the DLC in the game, selling the Elvish for as an extra download for people. So people were kind of willing this to fail. In the end, they've got their wish. Good luck, of course, to the 25 employees affected.
Crash Team Rumble, the new multiplayer spin-off of the Crash Bandicoot series, has been struggling to attract attention on the streaming platform Twitch a week after its release. With an average of only 316 viewers over the last 7 days, the game has sunk to double figures at times, even lower than single-player titles such as Aliens Dark Descent and the original Grand Theft Auto. Despite the creative director's confidence in the post-launch content plans for the game, even he admits that hitting their mark is key for their success. With success seemingly a long way off, all the AIs are joking down the pub calling it Car Crash Bandicoot.
That's all right. That's all right.
It is all right, Steve. That's because I fed it that line.
Why are we judging games now by this metric, the Twitch current players?
Yeah, that's a good question, but it is important, isn't it? It's an illustration of what people are playing and also what people are enjoying watching others play. I think what's sprung out to me about this news story was that the story about it failing was literally the first time I'd ever heard of it.
Right, me too.
It's not on Steam, so that's one reason.
Okay.
It's on all the other console formats, and it's on.
I was going to ask you why aren't they judging it by Steam concurrent players? So
yes, exactly, and you can't do that off. I think it's on Battle.net if that's their platform. I don't play Call of Duty, so I wouldn't know. But yeah, if that's the first time I've heard of it, I mean, admittedly, I'm not presumably a Crash Racing multiplayer only game's target audience. But still, I would have thought it should have filtered through to me at some point. We should have seen it where in the usual places that we look. It's not been particularly well received by critics. It's got a Metacritic score of 68 currently. But again, it shows that it is difficult, particularly if you're aiming for a multiplayer only game. It can be really difficult to attract the attention. Disney Speedstorm, another one, higher profile, we have heard of that, will be going free to play in September. So that spent quite a short period. I think it will be under a year within this sort of paid for early access. I've got the impression that Disney Speedstorm has been doing better, but it'd be interesting to see what happens when it goes free to play. That'll be when I jump in, Steve.
I haven't tried Speedstorm yet. I assume this game, like one of the games that I'm going to play in the review section, is another Battle Pass, season content type thing, which seems to be the model, especially obviously for these multiplayer games. It feels like games like the Disney one trying to have the best of both worlds. They don't want to be tarred with the free-to-play brush, which puts some people off. Also, there's a very definite advantage to having people pay 40 quid at the start. But if you go and have a look at the Steam page for these games, they are treading that line, aren't they? They're saying you've got a 40 quid base game and you get some points included in that. And then there's a 15 quid extra gold pack. And then there's the deluxe pack, which all have more points. On the game that I've been playing, I read a review from a concerned, it genuinely seemed quite an honestly phrased person go, why, if I've paid for this game, do I have to keep on paying for it? It's like, it's the 1990s, mate. That's how things work now. All right, news story 3.
An update from Larian Studios on Thursday has revealed that the release date of anticipated game Baldur's Gate 3 for PC has been moved up almost a month, while the PlayStation 5 version has been delayed by a week. Despite its impressive size, with more cinematic dialogue than 3 Lord of the Rings books combined, developers are not compromising on quality and are doing their best to make sure the game is delivered at the best possible quality. However, these changes have resulted in frustration among fans and independent publishers, such as Yogscast Games, who must adjust their own plans due to the studio's timing change.
Are you actually doing that?
I am actually doing that, yeah. I was absolutely blooming livid this week. It's a tricky year to pick exactly when you're going to launch a game. And, for 3 months, we've earmarked August the 3rd for one of our releases. We were going to release Tales and Tactics on August the 3rd. We've got a big Steam event happening on August the 3rd. It's the Tiny Teams Festival, which celebrates a whole range of games developed by small studios across the gaming industry, not just ours. We had over 1,000 games submit for the Steam Festival this year. So we've spent ages. Well, I haven't, but the Tiny Teams team have spent ages literally playing every submission. They're curating it down into a list of 100 or so sort of games, which are then going to be streamed across the Yogscast Twitch channel. All that stuff remains, and it will happen, and it will be brilliant. But we were also going to launch Tales and Tactics on August the 3rd at the start of Tiny Teams as well, provide that sort of moment for it. And, having spent weeks trawling through video games release dates, and then having to wait while Jeff and his mates then did all their paid-for promotions and did more of their release dates. And then getting through that with August the 3rd intact and going, okay, guys, full steam ahead. Just to wake up to a Discord message, as I did early this week, picked up my phone. It's from someone going, Baldur's Gate's brought its release date forward. Now, Baldur's Gate have brought their release date forward, only on PC, mind. actually, maybe Xbox, but not PlayStation. Why have they done that? They brought their release date forward because of Starfield's release date moving, and so you have this sort of this domino effect of, and I'm like, come on, guys, why don't you grow a pair and go up against each other and leave little old Yogscast Games and Tales and Tactics a clear window? It looks like we're going to delay it by a week. We're going to launch at the end of Tiny Teams on August the 10th, simply because, when you have these huge releases on Steam, they suck up so much player time, player money, store support. There'll be a huge banner at the top of Steam and all the rest of it. And, when you're trying to launch, a brilliant single player auto battler game from the developers of the most popular fan-made Slay the Spire mod, you need a bit, as much clear space as you can get,
as well as regular promotions inside the world's oldest video game radio show.
Well, I propose a new law, Steve, that if you are a AAA game, which I believe Baldur's Gate 3 is, once you've publicly stated a release date. Of course, you are allowed to move it if things change, but every time you move it, you must double the SRP. Okay, as a punishment.
Good luck lobbying the EU to get that one through as well. How many of these? So we talk a lot about how there are, 10,000 video games released every year or even more these days. How many of these absolutely must-avoid games are there on the calendar?
Well, all of October and November are pretty difficult. Well, they're pretty difficult. We had set a year ago on launching Plate Up console on a certain day, which we've not revealed yet. But unfortunately, that day is clear, but it's clear for October. What you can determine from that is that, thankfully, it's not coming out the same day as Mario.
Would you mind if that clashed with Baldur's Gate, because those are two very different audiences and a completely different platform?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, so we're thinking specifically console here, and it's and it's launching into Game Pass, so Xbox is effectively sorted. So we need to make sure that it's getting visibility on PlayStation and on Switch. But there's a lot going on with Plate Up, so it's launching digitally and physically, and the physical date is more difficult to move because there's so much more planning that goes on. We need to submit the game shortly in order to hit manufacturing dates and get the games into shops. And the problem is, if you drift it further into the end of October, beginning of November, the shops themselves are going to be less interested because they're carrying loads of Mario and all the rest of it. So that's been tricky. But yeah, we've got obviously Baldur's Gate, Starfield, Assassin's Creed, Metal Gear Solid, Mario. There are lots and lots and lots of heavy hitters coming up. Now, as you say, there is never a game. There's never going to be a day when you're the only new game launched, and you can't expect the stores to do all of the heavy lifting for you. But when you're competing with people's time, which Baldur's Gate will undoubtedly suck up, when you look at August the 3rd, you go, okay, cool. We mentioned peak concurrence earlier. You're like, okay, so will everybody, it's done well in early access. Baldur's Gate has. It's got peak concurrence of 75,000 people, which is really, really high on Steam. And so you're like, okay, does that mean that everybody's bought it already? But even if they've already bought it, the fact that it will be version 1.0 will drag everybody back in. And you're just sort of wiping out a large player base. Now, how many are overlaps on, exactly the Tales and Tactics audience? When you look at, Steam has got, on at any moment, over 1 million people playing on it. A lot of them are playing Counter-Strike Go. Then you add these other things in. Yeah, and if you don't launch well, then it can be very, very difficult to get that back. So, yeah, thanks, Larry and the studios. I hope your launch goes well. We'll see you on August the 10th.
Valve appears to have recently started banning Steam games featuring AI-created art assets unless developers can prove they have the rights to the IP used in the training datasets. Customers and developers alike are confused by Valve's decision to reject a game with AI-generated assets, as there are already other titles released that utilize AI on the PC marketplace. With the current situation unclear, developers should be wary of submitting games featuring AI-generated content to Steam, and my AI buddies and I won't be looking too hard at the platform for our next games. Instead, you can find us on the Epic Games Store. See you there.
I wonder if AI Charles Bot is working on AI Broken Sword.
I mean, this story threw up many questions. I was like, using an AI voice that we've trained on Charles's appearance on One Life Left to recount a story about how Valve is throwing out stuff where it can't prove that you own the copyright to the training. Do we own the copyright on the training? I suppose it's our show, isn't it? Do we own the copyright?
You asked Charles whether we can have the copyright to his voice?
No.
We're going to see him soon, aren't we? Maybe at a social engagement. So we can just give him a few glasses of sherry, ask him if we can have his voice. Can't see why he'd say no.
What do they say? Don't ask for approval, ask for forgiveness.
Well, I have a press release going out about one of my new games, I think on Wednesday.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's on Wednesday, so I can't talk in detail about this, but we've been doing some stuff with AI voice, which is why, sort of how Charles Bot ended up getting invented. And obviously very, very worried about, this is less about the ethics, but the ethics are tied up with the legal implications and the ownership data here. And the reason that Valve are pulling this stuff is because I think there's obviously implications for them, as well as the store on which stuff whose provenance is unknown is being sold. So they've no need to, dabble in this world. And indeed, most major games companies are being very, very shy of it at the moment because they're not sure how this stuff is going to shake out either. But I do think and generally there are interesting game implications for using AI data if it can be trained or generated in a way in which ownership is assured. Now, the way that we're using it is for voice acting, and there's been a lot of controversy about this in the press as well. People saying that it's going to eliminate voice actors and it's going to threaten career paths and all of that, and I can completely understand that. I think there are some interesting game use cases. One of which is that the game that we're making is generating a daily dungeon. And what we want is a kind of narrator to describe what you are about to encounter. And we also want a narrator to, during this thing, comment on things. Now, if you record 1,000 or less than that, if you record 100 or whatever barks of the narrator going, "Oh, a goblin! Oh, a goblin! Oh, a goblin! Oh, several goblins."
Oh, a goblin!
Yeah, you end up getting quite tired of this. We've all played FIFA, right? And you hear the number of times that is it still Clive Tilsley saying things in
no,
no, it's Peter Drury. Who is it?
I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Whoever it is.
I did play the new the most recent FIFA recently. Yeah.
But you sort of learn that intonation, right? You hear that, and you hear the number of times, the 6 times he's recorded. Oh, it's a good cross. Oh, it's a good cross. Oh, it's a good cross. Now, if you can get a AI voice to generate infinite numbers of those, then suddenly that AI voice becomes more human. It is like there is someone in the room commenting, saying, "Oh, careful, lads, there's a goblin over there." Those subtle changes do change the way you regard that voice in the room. Now, the question is, can you do that ethically? And the approach that we've taken is we're we've trained the data on this actor, who we've employed to train our machine with several hours of data, so more than CharlesBot. So it's even better than CharlesBot, which I think CharlesBot took about 7 minutes of data from when Charles was on the show, and then we've handed that data back. We've given the sort of black box to the voice actor, and the voice actor is licensing the use of their voice in the game via this technology for us, which they're very happy with, and we're happy with as well. So I think that's a model that works, at least.
Is it
technical and an ethical?
Do you, Steve? How do you feel? How do you feel CharlesBot is feeling now as he's listening back to the show, knowing that he's not got the gig? Oh, I'm good enough for their news, am I? But I'm not good enough for their dungeons.
Well, that, to me, shows a lack of faith from CharlesBot in One Life Left. And
maybe.
There are plenty of other newsreader games voices out there. Indeed, next time we have a guest on the show, we could easily have... Well, who was our last guest? It was Tony Gowland, wasn't it? Tony Bot.
Tony Bot.
Assuming we can sort out the licensing.
It's tricky though. How are you going to navigate the current press hostility towards AI-generated materials?
I think you can't. Like we've got a PR working on this. A good friend of the show, actually, who. Immediately had a response from one journalist that said, "You don't want me to cover this. I'd ask some very difficult questions."
For God's sakes.
And
name them, Steve.
I'm not going to do that.
Go on. Otherwise, I'm going to speculate.
God,
that was the Daily Mail, wasn't it?
I think that we've got some decent answers to those, and I don't mind being asked difficult questions, because if I don't have an answer, then that might give me pause to think in more detail about what we've done. I mean, I've thought in quite a lot of detail about it already, but maybe there are questions for which we don't have answers. I hope we do, and I want to make sure that we're doing this in a correct way. Now, the answer to that is, like everything that the internet piles on, it's an easy way of getting views and clicks and likes and retweets and all of that kind of thing. And I understand why you want to be part of a gang hating everything. I just hope that that's not at the cost of genuinely interesting gameplay possibilities. And to be honest, this stuff is coming. Like, there's no way that we're not going to be using AI-generated content in games in the future. AI is a spectrum anyway, right? Like, and we're already using AI. Like we've been using procedural generation in games for decades, almost since games' inception. Machine learning is a thing that's taken place in games since I was a journalist as well. And all that we've got right now is a hyped up version of this technology that we've been building on for literally decades. So, yeah, the problem is right now the sourcing of the data and the data sets. I've no doubt that we're going to get around that. And at that point, people are probably going to have to stop being angry about it, or they will stop being angry about it because it's been sourced, and they'll move on to hating something else.
I mean, you've done a few ethically dubious things in your time, Steve.
All the time, every day.
But I have to say that answer and the way that you're doing it absolutely sounds like the model moving forward. And yeah, the fact is that if you didn't use this technology in the way that you are, then the game would the end result of human doing that acting would be, as you say, not as diverse. But like for whoever that was to respond with, well, I'm going to ask some difficult questions.
Well,
Go on, then.
I'm going to do it because they've refused to. They've said, "You don't want me to. I'm not going to do this because."
No, I do. I do want you to ask me different. Yeah. What is the purpose of life? Answer that.
It's CharlesBot.
Newly revealed documents have uncovered the full scale of Sony's development budgets for their PlayStation blockbusters. It has been reported that to create Horizon Forbidden West and The Last of Us Part 2, $212 and $220 million respectively, was spent over 5 years with 300 employees. Sean Layden, former PlayStation America's boss, discussed the unsustainable costs of modern blockbusters and suggested shorter games to help control development costs. Who knew creating a video game was so expensive? $220 million could have gone to more necessary things like saving the bees.
He's not wrong.
No, that was genuinely unprompted, although it did take me a few times. It was like, can you tell us what $220 million would be better spent on? Saving the bees.
Almost literally anything, one could argue. This came from, to front page the numbers that Charles slightly mangled there. That's two games that cost Sony over $200 million to develop. And that's a lot of money. This came out from an error in redaction, right, in the documents involved in the case.
Did you see how they redacted it?
No.
How do you redact things, Steve?
I make sure they absolutely go nowhere near the internet. That's the only answer. I would not trust. I guess I've seen people do the thing where they highlight in black and think it's redacted, and then someone just highlights and cuts and pastes.
I believe this one
screenshot it and do it that way.
So I believe this one was that it was physical black marker, but it was when you scanned it in, it's reflected through the. I believe so. There we go. $220 million.
Wow.
And that's how much that game cost, along with the redactor's job. I would have thought that's how much game cost.
Would you have guessed that? Because that is. How much would I have guessed? I reckon I would have guessed 80 million.
Yeah.
Around about.
Do you remember when One Day in the Future games were going to cost over 100 million?
Yeah. How much do you reckon GTA, they're on 6, is costing in terms of budget? It's going to be bigger than that.
Many. Yeah, it will. I would have thought so. They've been doing it a long, long time. I wouldn't have guessed that much, but it just goes to show how if you're spending that money, you think that Daedalic closed down their internal development on the loss of Goblin, which won't have cost anywhere near that. Yeah. You are, when you get into that territory, it simply has to sell. Simply has to. You imagine the pressures that they're getting now. I mean, you think about the Suicide Squad game, which gets continually delayed. How much is that costing? And it's costing more and more and more the further they move it back, and they're doubling the amount they have to charge for it every time they move it back as well, according to the new laws. So it will have cost $200 million, but it's going to cost the consumer $100 million a copy.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Charles Bot.
One Life Left video game news with
me, Charles Bot 1.0.
You are listening to One Life Left on Resonance 104.4 FM. Resonance is a radio station based in London. It's fantastic. Thoroughly recommend you listen to any of the other shows as well. You might also be listening to One Life Left as a podcast. You can find that at www.onelifeleft.com. There you can find the show notes with links to the Discord and all kinds of things like that. There's also hello.onelifeleft.com for a fast look at those links. The show has been edited by our under caretaker, Phil. He's not around at the moment because he's got his day job to do, which means Simon and I off the leash.
He messaged me last night going, "Are you recording tonight?" I said, "No, we're not. No, we've got a temporary new time tomorrow, and then we're going to record a more regular time moving forward. Although we are approaching our summer holes, aren't we, Steve?
We are. You got any plans?
We get August off. I'll be going to Edinburgh. So I was going to launch a game and then go to Edinburgh, but now I'm going to, for a much needed break, I'm now going to not launch a game, go away on a break, which will be overshadowed by the fact that I'll have a game to launch the day I get back. Thank you, Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, that's the real cost here, Steve. The real human cost is, and then we're going to go to Gamescom, aren't we?
Yes.
And then we've got the social function that you mentioned, where we're hopefully going to see Charles Bott in real life. And then I'm going to go on a caravan holiday.
Talking of Gamescom, we need a gig for Gamescom, a Maraoke gig. So if anyone's looking to throw a party, let us know. Otherwise, I might literally, like we've done for Develop, which has sold out. Our gig at Develop sold out a couple of times. We've put more tickets on sale by removing chairs from the venue.
See you later, chairs.
Bye, chairs. Won't need you. Standing room only at Maraoke during Develop. That's been really good and fun. So we may end up doing the same, but in Germany, which seems a little bit more high risk. But yeah, if any of you listeners know anyone who wants to sponsor Maraoke for a party, let us know. Right, time for the letters.
Email, messages, and forward BCC. One Life letters.
Simon, have you located any letters this week?
I've seen some correspondence on the Discord from Uppy17 who wrote, "Dear team," and possibly plus a super special guest. I'm a bit behind on my podcast, so I don't know if this gets mentioned in episode 512, but Wordle is an exact copy of the Dutch game show Lingo. In Lingo, you have to guess a word by knowing if its letter is in the right place or in the word, but in the wrong place. Wordle, in other words. The only exception is that Lingo also has a bingo subgame where you have to avoid the rude ball. This is why I can pronounce twing twing in a perfect Dutch accent. I can't. I'm hoping that you can use this data to narrow down the game shows that the New York Times will next be using for inspiration. Cheerio, Ben. Thank you, Ben, for that update. It didn't get covered, but it has done now.
I noted that in Ben's kindly posted screenshot, which you can see if you join the One Life Left Discord, the Dutch game show uses 6-letter words rather than 5-letter words, which, you know, Wordle is such a small, tight game, and I think as we saw many of the imitators that sprang up afterwards, not least friend of the show, Ed Jefferson's Letteral, which uses a single-letter version of Wordle. That the 5-letter choice is very, very important. And since since there's very, very few things that define Wordle, it's 5 letters plus Mastermind, isn't it? The old board game. So lots of influences go into Wordle. But yeah, didn't know about that one.
Thank you, Ben, for that update. Why is he watching Dutch game shows? Do we know this?
No idea. Maybe you can follow up with another letter next week. Discord user Third Prize did clarify that they did post a letter, but had second thoughts. So we weren't making it up, or I wasn't making it up last week when I was like, I swear someone wrote to us. It is too unusual an occurrence for me to forget, and you, the listeners to One Life Left, can change that by writing to us.
team@onelifeleft.com.
Or just pop it in the Discord and don't delete it. That would be my advice.
So have you got any recollection of the content of Third Prizes?
Absolutely no recollection at all.
Should we make it up? Get an AI Charles Bott letter writer?
Right now. Maybe we could do.
Could do that, couldn't we?
Yeah.
So my suggestion for the functionality of Charles Bott is that sometimes I'll put a story in and he'll précis it very well, but the sign off won't quite be good enough. Sometimes they do still get through because I go, okay, he isn't going to get better than this. But it would be useful sometimes to be able to re-choose some elements. And then if you're just trying to change the joke or something. So I don't know if you can get on that once you've announced your game.
Yeah, I can split it into 2. So I can do the précis and then the joke maybe separately.
If you can just update your variables.
I will do.
Thank you.
I will do. All right, thank you. Please write some letters for next week. Thanks, everybody. This is One Life Left on Resonance 104.4 FM. My name is Steve and that clicking in the background is Simon. Are you doing your day job right now?
I'm not, Steve. No, I was just looking. I've just seen the time, and I don't think we've been playing enough games to take us through to the end of the show. So I was just looking at something else that we could talk about, Steve. It's the Develop conference next week.
Yes.
You're heading to Brighton to do Maraoke and run something on the beach.
Am I, though?
Are you? Well, you said you were.
Well, no, I'm definitely running Maraoke. I've got the flyer for the F-Up Con in front of me, but I'm not sure. Do you want me to read the flyer out to you and see?
Yes, please.
Okay, so see whether this would be a compelling event for you to attend.
Okay.
That speaker isn't their bio. That speaker isn't their talk. They are the things they won't tell you. They are a series of accidents, illicitly appropriated victories, horrifying lessons quietly drawn from personal disasters. They are the things they emit, their scars, their dumb decisions, their cold sweat memories. They are an effing mess. So am I. So are you. Life isn't LinkedIn. Join games industry friends to share and celebrate the things we got wrong, including attending a series of 10-minute talks that hide nothing. Bring gin.
Very good.
And then it says the location and time, which is the opposite of a conference, on the 11th of July, 2 p.m. Don't know.
Nice.
Don't know. Sounds. I would go to it, but I fear if I went to it, it would be mostly me weeping and drinking gin from a beach.
What we could do, though, is that we could look at what else is on at 2:00 and see what you're up against. And I can tell you, Steve, exclusively, at 2 p.m.
Okay, go on.
There's a talk by Alex from Tiny Build entitled "AI in Game Dev: Is My Job Safe?"
Well, no, as we've clearly established, Steve's coming for you.
Okay, so we've dealt with that.
Two different directions.
Okay, also on at 2:00 is a talk by James Binns entitled "The One Thing Every Game Needs." I mean, that's very much. Well, I was going to say, very much playing to James's strengths there, isn't it? Well done, James, on that. That's on at 2:00. It's clickbait, though, isn't it? So you can safely skip that.
Yeah.
There's an important talk by Safe in Our World. Where is your safe space within the games industry? I mean, how do you feel about pulling people away from that talk, Steve? I mean, that in itself is an F-up.
Yeah, true. It fits with the nature of the conference, doesn't it?
Indeed,
I assume Safe in Our World, which is very, very important, have several talks at Develop.
I would have thought so as well. You are also up against Hello Games, Snowed-In Studios, and TT Games. There's a lot going on at 2:00. How long is it running for? Because if it goes for over an hour, Steve, you are going to miss a developer's guide for raising money from venture capitalists. I mean, come on, that's why we all get into making games, isn't it?
I don't know. As I say, I genuinely don't know if I'm going to do this. I may just go and sit on the beach with some friends, which is essentially what this is anyway, around that time. So we will see. If it goes on, it'll probably go on for a couple of hours.
Other speakers at the conference on the Tuesday, Steve, the day of Maraoke, the opening address is by Chris Charla.
Oh, I love Chris.
India Xbox, how indie devs continue to push the envelope in gaming. What do you think Chris's F-up would be?
Ooh. Chris is very into giving skateboard decks to indie developers, which I've always thought is quite hazardous.
Yes.
Might be something there to drill into.
Elsewhere, we have got, there looks like James Batchelor is doing XX things that are definitely not the future of games development. Would that be numbered lists? Overcoming the Imposter Syndrome is on at 3:00 on the Tuesday.
The answer is you don't.
And that's a round table and that's free. Steve, you could go to that.
Yeah, I would summarise that by saying it is always with you. It never goes away. And if you think it does, then you're an imposter. You're fooling yourself.
5 o'clock, here's one that we won't be listening to. Knowing when to stop.
Yes, quite. Who's doing that?
That is Veronique and Stephen from High Res Studios.
Okay.
So it should be fun. And then mine are on the Thursday. Mine is at 12:15. I'm doing a talk with Mark from Fourth Floor entitled Plate Up, a Recipe for Success, or Why Wish Lists Don't Always Matter.
Oh, that's something that you feel quite strongly about, and I'm surprised that you've got the word always in there. Like, that feels like a little...
Oh, because they do, yes.
A little bit of a
well, you know
cop-out.
why it's there. It is a cop-out. It's just in case anybody disagrees with me. And because I'm an imposter, Steve, I don't think I'd be able to take that. No, it's because they do matter to a certain extent. But what we're going to prove is that this obsession with predicting the future from wish lists, that's what I'm there to dispel. So I am going to pull down my trousers and show all the wish lists from all our games, and I'm going to show exactly how they sold and how there's no consistency to them, and then talk about the sort of things that did work and what you can do once you have a game that sells 201,000 copies in its first month.
I'm looking forward to hearing you praise it at some point in the future. I think it's time for the reviews. Right, Simon, do you want to go first or shall I?
Well, I've played a couple of games this week. The first up is a game called Trepang 2.
Never heard of it.
Were you aware of Trepang 1?
I wasn't.
Well, I mean, it's a thing. It was a big old launch on Steam last week or the week before.
Okay.
Part of my job is to look at, what is doing well and what looks like it may be doing well, predicting the future off wish lists. Mm-hmm. And I saw that Trepang 2 had an awful lot of followers on Steam. So I was keen to get my hands on it. It was billed as like an FPS Max Payne. So fast-paced guns, play, where you can slow down time and pull together combinations of just extreme gunplay. It's quite graphic, Steve, in terms of what you're able to do. But it's super stylish, very slick. The FPS purists seem to really adore it, and I can see why that is. I'm not as good as some of those players, but I'm still having a blast taking out future soldiers, basically, who all seem intent on getting me. Mm-hmm. I'm not. It's a story where you begin the game imprisoned, and you have to break your way out of the location, which features, I have to say, some of the strangest video game geometry I've ever encountered. If this building existed in real life, you would have to question the sanity of the architects and their obsession with short, curvy corridors. However, it does make for a great environment when you are unable to dispatch people intent on doing you harm. Lots of good fun. Enjoying it very much. 7 out of 10.
I have been playing another game that's doing very, very well, which I had never heard of before, which is a game called Only Up. Have you heard of this?
Oh, you know why this is doing well, don't you?
Well, I know very little about it. I tried to do some research around it last night. And the further I Googled, the more I got involved into some stuff that I didn't like the sound of. But you can tell me once I've done. So what I'll do first is talk about the game.
Yes.
Abstracted from the developer and the nature of its success. So Steam recommended to me. And the idea of the game is it's a game where you've just got to get as high up in the world as you can. You've just got to climb up. It's a third person climber, I guess. Now, I've really enjoyed climbing up in the world in Zelda. It's really nice, feels fun. There's a challenge. How am I going to get to the top of that object? How am I going to get to the top of that mountain? So I thought it'll be a bit like that. And also just the nature of climbing up stuff is compelling, I think. My first impression was not great, Simon. Floaty movement, horrible controls. It's got that kind of joypad compatibility, which is barely joypad compatibility. Force on something feels very twitchy. Just feels poorly built. Felt like it was made from a jumble of assets downloaded from an asset store. The narrative, such as it is, as you climb through, delivered Bennett Foddy getting over it style, as you go through the world and get a little bit higher, suddenly a voice chips in, is poorly scripted and delivered by an AI, or not even an AI voice, just a computer voice, which is doesn't sound human at all. And it's got that mechanic like getting over it, where when you fall down, you end up right at the bottom again. So it's frustrating gameplay. Also, incredibly poorly designed as far as I can see. There is no difficulty curve or no smart things. It's just, those annoying game loops. You'll remember them, Simon, that you got at fairs where you have to track a little metal curve around a piece of wire. It's just like that, but with even shoddier controls than your shaking arm. Really didn't enjoy it. However, the compelling nature of just trying to get higher up in the world is kind of interesting. It is kind of like, I quite like that feeling of just, I'll just try again, until you fall too far that it's frustrating and you give up forever and turn it off. And then you Google what's going on, and it seems, to me, I've never heard of the game developer, was unable to find any information about them. A lot of streamers are involved in this, and there's also what seems to be some, I don't know whether it's crypto or NFTs stuff, but there's some of that referenced in the world as well. What do you know about it, Simon?
Yeah, same as you. For some reason, Steam started serving it up to me, and again, that's an illustration of how dynamic a store Steam is. When something is doing well, it starts appearing in more places and in front of more eyes. And the same as you, I'm like, what is this? It's not like Among Us or Human Fall Flat, which suddenly became Steam sensations, a year and a half after they were launched. This came out in May. But yes, it's been driven by some Twitch streamers saying, "Is this the hardest game ever?" Etc. I think its price as well, it's reasonably cheap. It's currently 30% off in the Steam sale, so it's £6, £5.95. But yeah, looked into it, realised that it's absolutely not for me. But I've seen, like you, some of the surrounding controversy around it. It was removed from Steam briefly towards the end of last week over those questions. Yes,
yeah, was not theirs. But that's been replaced and it's back there. I did wonder, before I knew about all of this, whether this was close to the future of gaming, in that what you're going to get is these beautiful epics that cost 200 million, things like Zelda, things like The Last of Us, that are so polished and so beautiful, and they have to succeed. There's so much money behind them, they cannot fail. And then these scrappy little things that are made from assets and have horrible controls, but are become zeitgeisty for whatever reason. Anyway, I didn't enjoy it. 7 out of 10.
If only you had a Twitch channel, Steve. I've been playing Jedi Survivor, which is the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order. I've been playing it on the ROG Ally, which has meant that there's usually been something else going on in the room while I've been doing it. Either just some TV or some family interactions. And so I've not been playing it under the perfect environment. I'm about 2.5 hours in. I've got literally no idea what's happening. I can tell you that I appear to be going to places that seem to have been written deliberately for the game and may well be Star Wars canon now, but they're certainly not, I want to be on Hoth ideally, or Dagobah, places I've heard of. And these are all full of names and characters which appear to have come out of a generate a Star Wars name meme. It's fine. I'll probably crack on with it. 7 out of 10.
Fantastic. I've got another game to review, but I'll save it for next week. So that's the end of the reviews and nearly the end of the show. Simon, we're meant to be recording on Monday next week, but will we both be in Brighton?
I won't be in Brighton on Monday, no.
Okay. I will leave after recording the show then.
Okay, well, great. Well, then we could have done all of the filler bit that we've done this show next week. What on earth are we going to do next week?
We'll find out. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to Resonance for hosting, and thank you to you, Simon. Until next week.
Goodbye!
Bye.